So let's go ahead and begin, please. I'd like to, I'm Jeff Byron, the chair of the Monterey Bay Community Power Community Advisory Council. I'd like to call our regular meeting to order. And Ms. Slayer, would you please take the roll?
I would. Thank you, Chair. Dr. Bueno.
Present.
Hartman, is currently absent. Osmer.
Here.
Wolfram. Here. Amasquita.
Here.
Stedman.
Here.
Groot.
Here.
Bazira-Wist is here. Capron.
Here.
Vice Chair Levon.
Here.
And Chair Byron.
Here. Will you call again, please, on Ms. Wist?
As soon as she gets to her mic. Bazira-Wist, which her mic wasn't on.
Here.
Thank you.
Well, good. That's a great attendance. Thank you all so very much for being here. Happy New Year. Let's, it's not on the agenda, but let's do a Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So item 2 is public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. We welcome any member of the public to please come forward. I don't think you have to identify yourself, but we always appreciate that so we know who's talking to us, but you don't have to. Sir, welcome.
Thank you. Robert Frischmuth, a member of the public, and I just wanted to bring up kind of a concern of mine, and that is that when we consider projects or proposals or any kind of thing this group would consider, we should include a concern for the duck curve. You all know what the duck curve is, right? Yeah. Well, we do that when we buy power for, on long-range power. We consider the duck curve. Buy wind. If we buy solar on the long-range contracts, it's with storage. But in a similar way, I think we should consider the duck curve on the demand side too, when we're, like the 2 projects that are being considered, the charging station subsidies and the car subsidies. We should consider the duck curve in how we implement those projects. And I have some ideas. I know it's on the agenda later, and perhaps maybe we want to think about some ideas about that at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fishmuth.
Michael Saint with Campaign for Sustainable Transportation. I hope everyone's had a good holiday and a good year start out. Appreciate it. I just wanted to touch on a few points on the Monterey Bay Community Power. I don't know if it was my computer or not, the agenda wasn't on the website for tonight, or actually the meeting announced. It still showed the December 20th, 2018.
No, it's
Well, that's a crucial issue. Let me check with Ms. Slayer.
I just looked on mine this afternoon and it wasn't
Okay.
there, so
It's there.
it could be my issue. Also, how do we contact you on email? Is it through Monterey Bay Community Power, or do we get, because I tried twice. I sent one to you, and then I sent one to Bren to contact you because I didn't hear a response. And I used that info@montereybaycommunitypower.org. Do you guys check that, or? I don't know. I wasn't getting any response.
I
So
would
just,
welcome some assistance on answering his question.
It says that's how we contact the CAC members. So
J.R. Killiger, Director of Communications and Energy Programs. We've put on our website that if there are any questions or folks would like to connect or at least provide any feedback or concerns for any of our boards, that they can email info@mbcommunitypower.org, and that goes to our team. And so I can double check to see if we've received that email.
Okay, I know I've received information in the past, sir. I did not receive what you
Okay.
may have sent.
Just checking. Okay, fine. And I was wondering on the website under where it says about, and then when you click that, it says MBCP. They have a little diagram of the different type, CEO, and then on down to different groups that work under the CEO. There's no CAC box, which would show you as part of the community power, basically. And all the other ones I've looked at from Sonoma have that. So I think that might be a nice addition to put on the website, just so people that are looking at the website know that there is a community advisory council. And I wanted to update you about Santa Cruz's kind of political direction on the bus pass situation, the free bus passes there. That's changed after the election in November. There were 3 new council members who are a little bit more towards transportation demand management and active transportation, so they are going to revisit the free bus program, and they've got 3 different alternatives for that. I would really stress, not an urgency, but it might be good timing that the next meeting here that we have a presentation by Emerson Barrow, who's the Director of Planning at Metro, and he could fill you in on exactly, because he will have a council meeting on the 22nd, I believe, City Council Santa Cruz, and then they will make a decision shortly after that in February, but it'll be before your meeting, so I think he would be really very informative at that time and know which direction it's going for possible funding from Monterey Bay Community Power as well. So just keep that in mind and see how that goes. So you're also invited to those council meetings if you're interested in the free passes and that type of thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just never know what we're supposed to respond or not respond to, so I look for help wherever it comes from. But I think there is some interest in the topics that you just brought up, and we'll be discussing them further. When I say that, I mean amongst council members. Mm-hmm. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda. Ms. Blair, are there any corrections or additions to the agenda? No. Okay. I do note that we did get a revised agenda that came out later on, I'm sorry, last Thursday or Friday. And if you wish to add any comments, fine. I just wanted to note that for everyone to make sure that you're working from that revised agenda, and it's very clearly characterized under item 7. There's some text that explains why the change, and I appreciate that very much. Did you want to add something?
No. There wasn't really much more to add. It's just spreading everything out.
It's very helpful when we get a revised agenda that it's clear why and what's changed. Because once you've read through a board package, you hate to have to do it again to find the changes. So thank you. Okay, so the agenda is as printed and on the website. So I believe we have an item 4, a presentation. Mr. Habashi, do you want to say anything about this, or is this Mr. Killigrew?
JR will be making the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. J.R. Killiger, Director of Communications and External Affairs, Energy Programs. We changed some names around. Just wanted to give folks a quick update, more of a celebratory update, actually, to think about all the commitment and support and stewardship to get this program up and launched, and then to see that from March until the basically end of December to see such amazing results kind of just lays the foundation for us to continue to build on that success, to reach more customers, provide more savings, provide better programs. So on that note, I'll move forward with my presentation. So I just want to give a quick update just around enrollment in general, just all the customers, what it's looking like. So we've got currently about 268,000 customers with an additional 10,000 more net energy metering customers who will be enrolled this month and in April. So after that, we should have all of our customers enrolled in the Tri-County region. Right now, we're running about 97.5% enrollment. I'm switching the narrative because a lot of other CCAs use, we've got a 5-10% opt-out. I want to be more of a positive engagement steward for you folks and talk about the number of accounts that are enrolled. So that's really successful. Additionally, I think most importantly, out of all the kilowatt hours that were estimated to transition over our service, we've held on to 96% of that, which is, I think, one of the highest in the entire state for the CCA community. So it's a big accomplishment for us. This is a little bit of a busy slide, but I wanted to at least share. We finally got enrollment stats, but every single one of our communities. I'm working with our data vendor to get more visibility into enrollments by different rate classes, different customer segments, whether it's residential, commercial, ag, care and FARA, medical baseline, NEM customers, to really get a nice profile of what each community looks like, to also be able to kind of pinpoint some hot areas where we may see higher opt-out rates to target outreach efforts. So it's really amazing to have this information. But overall, when you look at each one of the counties as a whole, I think Monterey County is about 97.5% enrolled. San Benito's a little on the lower side, but that just means we get to work harder and communicate better. So it's good to have a challenge. And then I think Santa Cruz County is about 98% as well overall. The one thing did note that City of Carmel does have a 99% enrollment rate, so it's pretty amazing to see. But again, overall, 97.5% is just downright fantastic.
Mr. Killigrew, I don't want an anecdotal answer. I'm looking to know if you have any real explanation as to why the difference in the counties.
Yeah. So if you
cities.
look at San Benito as a whole, there have been a lot of social media challenges there, whether it's Nextdoor or Facebook, and a lot of information that's just been swirling around that despite our efforts to get the word out and communicate, folks are still just making a decision based on word of mouth. So if they hear from somebody or say on social media that it's bad news, it costs more money, it's a hoax, then they just make a phone call to opt out.
So it's not just information, you're saying this is untrue information.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation going on.
I want to add that generally in rural areas, opt-outs tend to be higher than the cities.
Thank you.
Before I dive into the rebate metrics, I just wanted to highlight the amount of engagement that we did around in terms of investing and promoting about the MBCP rebate. They was hitting all customer bills in December. As you folks are aware, residential customers get their rebate on their December bill. Small to medium-sized commercial customers get it on their June and December bill, and then large industrial and agricultural customers get it quarterly on their April, June, September, and December bill. And what we did is we put a full court press on doing print ads in the dailies and the weeklies. We did a really wonderful press release. We actually got a couple stakeholders to lend their validity to this, most in particular Dole. They're one of our hallmark agricultural customers. We got their energy manager to provide us a quote on the press release, which I thought was huge. That customer actually saved, I think, about $60,000 on their collective accounts overall. Facebook, we really did with the Facebook graphics that were put together. We reached a lot of people, got a lot of impressions on Twitter as well as Instagram. So we kind of spanned the gamut. Moving forward, we're actually going to do rebate kind of blasts in June that are focused on the business community, and then a big one in December for the whole community when they get their rebate, so that we're constantly talking about the rebate and letting folks get aware about it.
I'm sorry, Jared, could you say again when the industrial folks get their rebates?
So in particular, it's E20P or E20s. So those are very large industrial customers. They get it March, June, September, and December, as well as Ag 5. So those are the two rate classes that get it quarterly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
So great news again about the data that we get and the model that Tom has put forth in terms of applying rebates on a frequency matter is we have much better data than other CCAs in terms of quantify the economic benefits. So we were able to kind of sparse it by the three main customer segments: residential, commercial, and agricultural. So as you can see, actually the business community was the big winner. It was $2.7 million was put back in small to medium to large businesses' pocketbooks. Residential, I think, got about $850,000. The asterisk behind that is that was only 5 months of service. So when you kind of extrapolate out a full year, that will balloon out as well. And then last but certainly not least, the agricultural community doesn't have a ton of actual SAIDs or meters, but they are pretty big users, and they were able to receive some pretty big benefits. And, the kicker is $4.4 million in total rebates in 2018.
Go ahead, Mr. Tillman. I have a question too. Go ahead.
So do you have a JR, an estimate of the percentage as far as the rebate coming back? I mean, right there, that's the total dollar amount, but as opposed to what does that represent as far as the rebate of the total amount they were spending? So I know it's we're trying to go for 3% on residential side. Is that the same for commercial?
Yeah, all customers get a 3% rebate off the MBCP charges. And so what that normally translate off the bill, if you were to kind of look at that on a monthly basis, but it doesn't work out, it's about a 1.5%. But when you look at the rebate that's accrued over the year, that's applied on the bill, it becomes a pretty significant bill reduction for that month. I've seen somewhere between like 10 to 30% off the total bill. Just depends about the amount of usage. Like we do apply the rebate to demand charges. So sometimes there are big users that get demand charges and that gets applied. So they see a pretty hefty rebate as well. But normally, most residential customers this year saw rebates somewhere between like $5 to $15, maybe $20 if they're big users. And so if you kind of look at the residential community over a 12-year period, just double that more or less, and you'll be able to get a better idea. But that's the great thing is this model allows us to get that data and be able to communicate that, whereas other CCAs that are on kind of they match PG&E, but then they reduce the rate, so customers get a little saving each month. It's impossible to do rate analysis for every single one of the customers to quantify the amount of money, where with Tom's leadership, we've been able to quantify that and communicate that based on, sectors, but also we've drilled it down to communities. So the great thing is we are now supporting and reaching out to each one of our 19 jurisdictions to let them know what type of rebate their entire community, all the customers in the city of Salinas, city of Watsonville, benefited from the rebate. And that's something that's unheard of in this industry right now.
Good. So if I may interrupt as well
Yep.
with a question or two, just if you go back for a second. So when you say commercial, that's really all commercial and industrial, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So and of course it's primarily energy usage that we're looking at here. So that's why they get the lion's share of the rebate,
That's
not
correct.
because there's some sort of inequity or whatever.
No,
in that
not at
distribution.
all. No, they all get the same amount, the same percentage rebate. It's just based about the consumption of energy, and therefore,
Okay.
if they
I just want to
consume
make
more-
sure that was all clear to everybody. But I got to say, it is wonderful to have this information as you described. It's not all the other CCAs have this kind of rate, what would it be, rate model or rate structure. So kudos to Mr. Habashi and staff for thinking this through and how we can get this stuff. So that's very helpful.
And then I stole my thunder, but we were able to get the rebates by community, so I won't kind of dive into each one. But it's just amazing to see that we're able to kind of sparse out this information and be able to communicate it. And the great thing is over time, imagine these numbers accruing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so that like each community, whether they're getting 30 or 100,000 or $1 million a year, you start adding that up for every year of service. It starts looking pretty impressive overall.
So since this is 5 months of the year,
Well, this is actually March to December for all the commercial customers, and then July to December for residential. So yeah, it's not a full picture of 12 months. So when I hopefully come back to you folks next year around this time, we'll have even bigger fun numbers to present to you all.
okay. And again, this is primarily based upon the amount of energy use in each of these jurisdictions,
Yes.
right? Okay.
And then I just wanted to kind of roll up the last slide with the total rebates applied to all of each county, including the incorporated jurisdictions. So you look at Monterey County overall got about 2.7, Santa Cruz County as an entirety got 1.2, and then San Benito got about 500,000. But I would like to promote that we did. We're doing a website redesign right now, and actually we did an RFP, got a lot of wonderful vendors, a ton of them from across the state, and we're happy to let folks know that we've hired Shipper Design out of San Juan Bautista. So we're supporting a San Benito County business to redo our website, and we've already seen some mock-ups, and it's looking beautiful. So it's going to take us to the next level. On that note, that concludes my presentation.
So I'm sorry I interrupted. Maybe others have questions or there's some discussion amongst the council. Okay,
Do you
none.
have this on the website?
We're getting there, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to?
We're working hard, but I'll make a note that we make sure to do that.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Killigrew. Welcome, Mr. Hartman. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
So I think the next item on our agenda is the consent. I'm sorry. Thank you so very much. He's faster on the button. I'm sorry that I forget, and I welcome being interrupted on this. On any time I forget the opportunity for public comment. Do we have any on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to move to the consent agenda, which is comprised only of the approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting, November 15th, 2018.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I forget, voice vote okay? Before we vote? It's always good to know. We have a first and a second to approve this agenda item. However, are there any public comments? Seeing none, Chair will entertain the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Maybe eventually I'll get that right on how we go through these. We're on item 5 of the regular agenda, and that would be the CEO's report as a discussion item. Mr. Habashi, it's good to see you and welcome, and I'm so sorry that you did not get that vacation that you were looking forward to during the break.
That's okay. It was a staycation. It counts all the same, right? Quick report today. The 2019 rates and PCIA, the PG&E's rates, that is, beginning to sound like a broken record. Every meeting we get together, I talk about these rates, and I eventually end up saying we don't have him yet. It's nothing new tonight. We still don't have him. We were supposed to get him sometime, I believe it was January 11th, for implementation in March, and that got postponed now to January 30th. Interestingly enough, one day after PG&E is scheduled to file for Chapter 11. So we don't know yet. Next month, I hope that I'll be sitting here saying that's what the rates are. And these rates are very important to us because we set our rates at PG&E's rates minus the PCIA. So without knowing what the generation rates are and what the PCIA is, we don't know what our rates will be. But
This is unconscionable, right? That this is going on, these delays are happening, because it really does affect the CCAs.
It does, and at this point, knowing that the generation rates are likely to come down and the PCIA rates are likely to go up, pretty much a double hit on us. We're not in any hurry to have him come up with the final rates. Let him take their time and get it right. And hopefully we'll come out of this with a smaller hit than what we anticipated when we put the budget together. So there's a silver lining somewhere there. As I've been emailing to you lately, PG&E has announced that they will file for Chapter 11 on or about January 29th, as they are required to do in accordance to SB 901, which was approved in December of last year. We have some idea about what the filing at least will look like, at least in accordance to one of the representatives. They called us up and told me what they intend to do. They gave us the assurance that I believe we needed badly, that our revenues will not be impacted and it will be passed right through as they're supposed to in accordance to the agreement that we have with them. So that seems to be at least gave us some comfort. That was the biggest issue that we were worried about, that these revenues are not going to be passed through. And that information also was passed to all the elected officials in a press release and a letter from PG&E. Still, we obviously need to wait until we see the filing on the 29th, and at which point we'll have a little bit more understanding of how we will be impacted, and as soon as we do know, we'll share it with you. CalCCA is working on putting together a bill to address some of the issues that we are interested in, and they're out talking to our legislators and finding. I don't believe yet they have found somebody that will be the lead author, but they are certainly don't have any shortage of people that would like to step up and authorize and share in pushing that bill forward. We have talked about offshore wind, and we probably will be talking about it over the next few years, and eventually we'll put something together, hopefully to work with the folks down at Trident. I believe that's the company that is building somewhere around 1,000 megawatt of offshore wind, or planning to build 1,000 megawatt of offshore wind off the Morro Bay. They are in a very, very early stages. They still have to win a lease in the area where they are now. With that area is going to be open for lease, and so they still have to win that lease. And from there, it will take them somewhere around 7 to 8 years to put that plan together. And we're going to be working with them, helping them along the way. And eventually, when the time comes, and if the price is right, we'll contract with them. Bren alerted me to something that I forgot to put on my report. Just to let you know, in December, the policy board approved a new policy that will provide a stipend for both the policy board as well as the Community Advisory Commission. That stipend will be $100 flat for every meeting you attend. And I believe it will be paid quarterly. Is that correct, Brent?
Yes.
On quarterly basis, those funds will be sent to you folks.
Any objection? Any objection, council members?
Just a big surprise and gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think many of you do drive quite a bit to come down here, not to mention that you are spending your time, which we do appreciate very much, and I think the least we can do. And I believe that's my report, Mr. Chairman, and happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Groot?
Sure, I'd like to go back to the discussion on PG&E, if I may, and there's been a lot of media and press, obviously, in the last couple of weeks about this, and I'm just wondering what your take is on the upheaval at the lead management positions there, and whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing for PG&E, and whether or not it will improve as they go through bankruptcy?
I mean, I can guess from everything that I've heard from them, as well as everything that they put out there, that they really don't want to out of this business. They don't want to actually cancel or terminate or push any contracts away. I think what they want to do is just to deal with the liability that's coming from the fire in 2017 and 2018. I think that's their biggest issue, and both the CPUC and the governor were trying to rush a solution in the last few weeks just to kind of prevent that from happening, but it was clearly obvious that it's going to be an uphill battle, and the price that they were going to have to pay probably was going to be a dear one. So they figured probably this is the best course of action, is just to file for Chapter 11, then take the next 24 months, maybe 30 months, working with all the folks that were harmed by the fire, eventually the ones that filed lawsuits, along with working with the governor, the legislators, come up with a solution that will make everybody happy. Meanwhile, it's really business as usual as far as how they conduct their business, and they will do whatever they need to do in order to address safety issues. Obviously, this is the biggest thing. So they're going to probably, my guess is they're going to try very hard in the next 6 months to do everything conceivably possible to address safety issues, and at the same time work with the claimants as well as the governor and legislators to come up with some solution to deal with the liabilities that they have to deal with. That is what I think is the logical thing. If I was in their shoes, that would be the approach that I would take. In the process, I guess a few top managers had to leave in order to clean things up and allow for probably a different generation to come in and deal with this crisis.
All right, and then I have another question also relating to post-bankruptcy filing, if they do actually go ahead and do that on the 29th or the 30th. Are we going to be ready with messaging for those who've already opted out and suddenly panicked because PG&E went bankrupt?
Yeah, we put it together definitely a message that, and probably Rob can jump in here and add to it, but almost daily now, since even before they actually announced, we got quite a few people on a phone call to talk about this issue, talk about the messaging of it, to talk about what we need to put in front of the legislators and the CPUC. And I think a letter will be going out, if it hasn't already gone out today, to PG&E to get the assurances that they told us over the phone verbally, asking them to give us those assurances in writing. There's roughly, I would say, maybe about 30 people that get on a conference call every day. And I would say at least 15 of them are lawyers. So I think we're going to be coming up with lots of good messages in the future that will deal with this issue. No offense intended, Rob.
Outside of the assurances that you've gotten from PG&E in terms of the safety of the funds that pass through PG&E that come to us, have our lawyers, do they feel confident that those funds are essentially not PG&E funds and couldn't be held up in bankruptcy court as being, assets that would have to be paid out to all their debtors?
I'll ask Rob to speak up.
Council. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Councilmember, because of the pending bankruptcy and the litigation surrounding it, I think our internal strategies would be protected, and we wouldn't want to discuss them here. I'll share that the statute that provides for PG&E to be the billing agent speaks very clearly as to what those pass-through funds are, and I think Tom has spoken to the verbal assurances that PG&E has offered. We'll see what their first day filings look like, and we'll be prepared under the guidance of Mr. Abashi and the Policy Board and Operations Board to take the necessary actions at that point to protect the interest of the authority.
I do definitely applaud the approach that this agency has taken to look out for the interest of customers first. We can speculate on a lot of things, but I think that's the most important thing. So these are good questions. Another, Mr. Capron?
Oh, thank you.
Please.
I have a question about the offshore wind and turn your mic on. Okay, so I have a question about offshore wind, and you mentioned Trident or Castle. I was wondering if any of the other organizations have reached out to, and where and how you're participating in the process. The other competitive bidders.
Sure, I can ask Dennis because he's the closest one to it, but I can fairly quickly say that we haven't got any contacts from the other possible bidders to win the lease. But we're contacted with Trident, and they ask us if we can send a letter to, I forget the acronyms of that organization. Dennis, can you remind me, please? BOEM, B-O-M-E. Yeah, B-O-E-M. In order to help support the notion that Trident would be the one to get in there ahead of other competitors, because I'm assuming that there will be competitors like maybe the oil drilling or others. And I think California is doing everything that it can do in order to prevent that from happening. And sending these letters not just to the BOEM, but sending it to I would say another 15, 16 different political figures, legislators, everyone that would be willing to listen. We are doing whatever it takes in order to help those folks be the winning party, or at least offshore wind to be the winning party.
Wow.
Is the technology that you're looking at the floating platforms that are further off the coast?
That's correct, yes. It will be 30 miles out.
30 miles. And is that state water or federal waters?
I believe that's federal water. That's where the lease is coming from. The federal government will be doing the lease. We still have the last 3 miles. Yeah, will be state. So that's why I think it's much more likely that offshore wind is going to win the day on this one. And Trident have already got approval and a contract with the fishermen off Morro Bay, and they already got a considerable support from the city of Morro Bay.
Water gets pretty deep when you get out that far, doesn't it?
I've
I
never
mean,
been out for
Miss
that far.
Wolfram probably knows better than anyone.
I don't know exactly how deep, but I do know that it is definitely deep water. I can get that information, but I don't know it. They have to pick the spot before. It's a pretty big area right now.
Any other questions for our CEO? If I may, I just have a couple of questions, actually maybe more comments. Our meeting, we had to cancel our December meeting. Is everything back to normal here? The room looks just fine now.
Oh, yes. I think they found the cause, and it was not a leak in the roof. It was a pipe leak that was between the roof and the ceiling, and they finally, when the water was gushing out of it, like, fire hose, they finally figured out what the problem was, and they got it all fixed up.
Well, I'm sorry we missed everyone in December, but that was apparently the reason. I'd like to thank you very much for the updates that you've been sending us on PG&E. I think these are very helpful, and I applaud the high road that this organization's been taking around this unfortunate situation for PG&E. And I think I may have forgotten to say this before, but congratulations on that rebate back to customers. I think that's really important. Customers have been told that and expected it, and even all the uncertainty that we've got around PCIA and other things, you were able to deliver on that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And thanks for delivering all the outreach materials for us, too, to be able to spread out to our people. It's been really helpful.
So if there's no more questions or comments from council members, we'll go to public comment on this item, please. This is item 5.
Good job. It's 6.
I was reminded.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Habashi. So item 7 is a presentation on the draft energy programs policy. It's a discussion item. Mr. Killebrew.
Yes, thank you, Chair Byron. Again, J.R. Killigrew, Director of Communications and Energy Programs, and I'm here to discuss and hopefully get your support of our draft energy programs policy. This at the end of the day, I think everyone's heart is in the right place about us deploying energy programs, doing them effectively, efficiently, and to bring about the biggest benefit. But I think deep down inside, we have to kind of understand who we are as an electric utility, and kind of we can be a little loosey-goosey with it, but I think at the end of the day, we got to have some definition about like what we can fund and what we can go after based on our identity. There are a lot of amazing agencies and entities out there that can span the gamut of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and supporting sustainability in the region, but I think we're a player in there. We can't do everything, so we want to just make sure we have that definition and that identity behind our programs moving forward. I just wanted to reiterate our JPA goals, again, to help maximize greenhouse gas reductions, provide stable and competitive rates, and then deploy local energy projects and programs. We came forth with our vision statement that I think, presented to you back in September, which was to support innovative energy programs equitably and effectively to MBCB customers through electrification of the transportation and building sectors, as well as support local development and distributed energy resources. Now, what we're looking on in terms of that, the 3 pillars of our energy programs are around those 3 components: transportation electrification, building electrification, and then distributed energy resources. And so the lens we're looking at is like, okay, our business is in kilowatt hours. And so our business is about helping to transform the transportation sector from that lens. There are a lot of amazing transportation agencies about there, community groups that are here to support a wide variety of programs and opportunities around reducing emissions with transportation, and we fully support that and we want to collaborate that. But I kind of look at it from somebody who comes from a climate action planning background, as you have like 7 or 8 or 10 different measures within a sector, and you have different entities helping to kind of spur those programs forward, as opposed to one entity trying to do everything. I just wanted to highlight a couple different opportunities. Again, we're looking at electrifying all sorts of vehicles, whether it's ag equipment. We actually had a great conversation with Mike Kelly, who's the director of marine operations from Mbari. We joked about potentially having an electric boat that Mbari could use one day. Who knows? But thinking about vehicles and what our role is in terms of electrification for vehicles from all walks of life. Again, providing the adequate infrastructure to charge those vehicles, whether it's at ag businesses or big industrial parks, homes, businesses, schools, you name it. I think additionally, then thinking about the building electrification sector, it's pretty kind of straightforward, just kind of bucketing into 2 groups. You've got residential, the residential built environment, and then the commercial and built environment. And looking at not only existing building stock, but how can we partner with developers on their new building stock that they're going to bring in to help electrify those. And then thinking about just electrifying appliances and infrastructure. And again, we're kind of giving ourselves like a general kind of guiding light towards what we want to do in terms of these pillars. And then finally, last but certainly not least, in terms of distributed energy resources, kind of what are we looking at in terms of, local generation, whether it be microgrids or different types of renewable energy resources, the opportunity for storage, aggregation of distributed energy resources, thinking about kind of pooling all those resources so that we could bid those into the CAISO or the DRAM or the different markets that can accept that and not only make it a value for us, but also the customers. And then certainly there's also the opportunity of energy efficiency as well. So we're really trying to kind of be as holistic and comprehensive as we can, but also being true to our identity as an electric utility, as somebody who's supplying electrons into the grid and helping to support a customer have stable, competitive rates and powering their homes or businesses. I also wanted to add a couple little focus areas to give us, I think, a little more flexibility, but it still kind of is relayed around the 3 pillars. So advocating for codes and policies around electrification of the built environment or transportation sector, or helping to support distributed energy resources. We definitely want to collaborate with local regional agencies to scale up or partner on grant funding opportunities that meet our MBCP energy programs policy. And then again, at the end of the day, it's still on the table of continuing to support rebates for underserved community members. Again, that's a possibility as always. So we definitely don't want to not have that be an opportunity for us within our programs.
I have a question real quick on the last slide.
Yeah,
Oh, good timing.
perfect.
Did you have anything else to add before?
No, that was it. So I can
So-
leave this slide up. Yeah.
On the second point, collaborating with local regional agencies, is that just focusing on electrification of them, or would that also include infrastructure projects that would potentially lower their usage?
Yeah, I think the vision of the second bullet point would be thinking about if we were to partner with, say, MBARD or the transportation agencies to go after bigger grant funding that we could bring into the region. So partnering with them to scale up resources to bring back into the community. I mean, we want to make sure that regional agencies have access to our programs just like anybody else does.
Okay.
I'm ready for the notes and the questions. So on that note, I'll.
There's another question.
Oh, yes.
When you're talking about the land use, is that also public land? Yeah, on the second bullet, like county land, state land, federal land.
Yeah, that's a good point. So thinking about, how could we help support if there's land that's otherwise not utilized for a good purpose? Like, how do we help support, unlocking the land potential for renewable energy projects if it's feasible?
Thank you.
Again, but being very cognizant of, land is always the most effective economic use of it first. Usually renewable energy projects kind of like scale down towards way at the bottom. So if there is land, we want to be very cognizant about whether it can be used for another opportunity. But again, if there is an opportunity for land that doesn't have another better use and we can take advantage of it and we can get it at the right price, then we're certainly open for that.
I'll add one thing. Just going back to the joint, what do we call it? The joint exercise of powers agreement talks about stimulating and sustaining the local economy. So have that like as part of your third pillar there.
Okay.
I fully agree that we need to partner with as many available agencies that have programs, funding, grant opportunities, and I'm going to repeat what I asked for in November, is that we have maybe some of the transportation agencies come in and make presentations about their programs on how they are moving forward with their fleets, what their programs are, what the opportunities for them to obtain grant funding for that type of equipment. The more we can get them involved in this, I think the better off we all will be moving vehicles in general towards the overall goal. And the other thing I wanted to mention is having just participated with my partner here, the MBARD program on replacement equipment in agriculture, and I think our biggest challenge is getting the juice to the location where we need it. And if we can figure out how to work through the mechanics of that, I think there would be a whole lot more opportunity within the agricultural community if and when they do come up with a tractor that's electric that works and fits our needs. Then I think a lot of people will jump at it, but it needs that infrastructure, and that's really the biggest challenge because tractors don't always come back to the barn every night. Yeah. They need a place to charge where they're at, and so we have to figure that out.
I'll just echo the support for hearing from transportation as well.
And you better believe that if not Monday, or sorry, tomorrow, or we're off on Monday, but Tuesday, I will be sure to reach out to the transportation agencies.
Excellent.
Just as a point of clarification, Councilmember Groot, do you mean transportation as in the traffic planning agencies or transit agencies like Monterey Salinas Transit?
Transit agencies, I guess I misspoke when I said transportation. Transit agencies, MST, Metro, whoever it may be.
Just to add, I've had the opportunity a couple of times to talk to some of the folks in transportation agencies or transit agencies in Santa Cruz, actually, and tried to find a way for us to work with them on not just bringing electric buses, but making sure that these buses are charged at the right time of the day. Apparently, it's pretty difficult. And I mean, that's what they shared with me, that they cannot, if they get electric buses, they will not be able to charge during the day, which is exactly when we want them to charge, because that's the time when there's plenty of juice in a grid, because they are limited by the contracts that they have with the labor unions and a variety of other reasons why it would be difficult, and the only way for them to be able to charge would be to wait until 6 or 7 o'clock when the buses stopped running to bring them into the yard and charge them, which is absolutely the worst time that you want to be charging any batteries, because that's the time when there's a lot of ramping up and down, and cost of power is very expensive. So there's definitely ways that we can work with the transportation, with the transit agencies. We just need to actually start thinking differently about how they do business. It's not easy for them because they've been doing it the way they've been doing it forever. And if we go into all electric buses, which I really hope that we would, whether in transit agencies or in schools or everywhere, then there has to be a way to change how they operate and the way they work with the labor folks. But we are working on it, I assure you.
Well, I think the paradigm shifts have to happen in a number of different sectors of our economy in order for this to all work. Obviously, we can't charge everything overnight. So, I mean, that goes for agriculture, goes for transportation, goes for everything. So I think the paradigm shift is going to happen all across the economy.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you've had discussions also, school districts and school buses seem like maybe that's an easier place to start because their buses come back in and sit during the day and it'd be ideal for charging during that time period.
I'd like to add a comment. I just have to tell you, having been in charge of writing the state's integrated energy policy plan about 10 years ago, and the way we were looking at energy infrastructure in order to meet the demand of charging, knowing that we had enough infrastructure in place to charge about 70% of the state's transportation infrastructure overnight. And that's when we wanted people to charge. But of course, it would have meant a heck of a lot more air emissions because we would have had to been burning a lot more fossil fuel in the middle of the night in order to do that. But that's where we were going 10 years ago. And to see this transformation that we're now charging when people want to charge and when we need them to charge, it's just a wonderful change. But the power of this agency compared to the way, unfortunately, investor-owned utilities have been able to respond in the past is that we can do something about it. We can provide the right incentives. And so I definitely applaud council members continuing to bring these topics up on this, and I'm certain that we've got a responsive agency. So don't give up on these, gentlemen. These are really good. I mean, sorry, I don't mean gentlemen, council members.
So I think we'll just take it back. So guess the next step would be to move forward with recommending this policy to the Ops Board for approval.
It's just discussion.
Oop, sorry.
So would you like to explain how we're going to do this?
Yeah. Well, before, if discussion is held for the council members, we'll take it to the public and get the public's opportunity to chime in on the matter. But ultimately here, this is agendized as a discussion meeting. So staff is very eager to get all the comments of all the council members and of the public, and we'll go back and make sure that those comments are taken in consideration in the policy that's ultimately going to go forward, but there won't be a vote at this point.
But there will be a vote, I think, if I understand correctly. I'd welcome clarification if I'm reading our agenda correctly on items 8, 9, and 10. Those are listed as action items. And that we will be voting if the council wishes to make a recommendation on those items. Correct? Got it. So, Mr. Killigrew, thank you very much. That was very helpful, very informative. I, however, will open up this item 7 on the draft energy programs policy for public comment. Fishmuth.
Robert Frischmuth again. First of all, I think that's an excellent policy. I really like it. And one of the, in my mind, one of the criterion in selecting projects for this organization is how it fits with the business. And our business is energy supply. And so when you're looking at evaluating projects that increase energy supply, electric supply, I mean, the electrification of both buildings and transportation is just a direct fit because that's the business we're in. I mean, there's a jillion ways out there to reduce greenhouse gases, and some maybe even better than we can do. But our business is electrification, and so that's where we should really focus our work. This business of the electrifying buses, I was just thinking about that a little bit, and it seems like with the time that buses are used most is doing the commute, going to work, coming home from work, and there ought to be more idle during the noontime. I mean, nature says the best time to charge it is at noontime in the middle of the day. And so somehow the bus companies have to, if they want to play, if they want electrification, they're just going to have to, change their their business a little bit. And it doesn't sound like a big change to me. It involves some time and negotiations, and it's going to take a while to electrify buses anyway. I talked earlier about the duck curve, and I was thinking about electrification of cars and especially the infrastructure. And you know, I think that's kind of a secondary thing that we ought to keep in mind when we do that. And I just wanted to give you kind of like some of my thinking, sort of an example how that might happen in the future. For example, with infrastructure to charge cars, the best time to charge the cars is obviously at around the middle of the day. So if you could somehow incentivize the companies that do charging stations, ChargePoint or whatever, the companies that put in charging stations and operate them as a business, incentivize them somehow to put them in locations, preferential locations, where people are going to mostly charge them during the day. And I think of the commute. I mean, the commute has to be one of the biggest greenhouse gas emitting things that happen. I can just visualize a parking lot full of charging stations it could be our big customers, you know, big customers where people are commuting and in the cars sit all day in the parking lot. Why not somehow get those charging companies to focus on those particular locations, and running in parallel with that, incentivize the employees of those same companies to switch to electric cars so they can charge them there. And we were talking about, I think the last meeting, about the Leaf. I saw it on television. I wasn't here, but I saw it on television. And the problem that the other CCA had is that they're losing their range. I used to have a Leaf, one of the first ones in Monterey County.
So, Mr. Fishmuth, I'll ask you if you'd wrap up your comments on
okay.
this item,
All right.
on this topic.
But it got rear-ended. It was what they paid me was very cheap. I mean, we could incentivize those kind of cars as commuting cars, practically just give them away, you know. So, I mean, those are some of the thoughts I had on the duck curve, trying to build them into our projects.
All right, thank you very much.
Good evening, Monterey Bay Community Power staff and Community Advisory Council members. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Kirsten Liskey. I work with Ecology Action, and I stand for full potential and joy for myself and all beings. And I'm delighted my organization works for a thriving people and planet, and I could not be more proud of what this organization has done, coming in on time, on schedule, and building a first-in-class CCE in a very diversely political region. I'm really thrilled about all of the program policy investments. Transportation and built environment are the two biggest greenhouse gas sources for our region. So to accelerate transition to a clean energy economy with the electrification programs is great. I wanted to just propose one minor amendment, and I think Councilmember Osmer and Levon will agree with me that we have some very powerhouse nonprofits in our community, and I would welcome the opportunity to partner with Monterey Bay Community Power as a nonprofit. We're not a regional agency. So thank you so much for your good work. Thank you for your service, council members.
Thank you for the comments.
Michael Saint once again. I personally want to thank Council Member Capron and Hartman and Council Member Groot for following up on this mass transit and also the Metro and MST presentation, possibly in February. That would be awesome. I also wanted to emphasize how important it is for mass transit. It can actually be the largest reduction in greenhouse gas emissions for transportation. It can carry so many people on a bus. It's way beyond EVs, and it also relieves congestion, which is extremely valuable for this area. And I really believe the free bus program touches on two of MBC's goals: reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And if you just took 3%, which is what our Metro is carrying now of passengers, and got that up to 8.5%, you would double the amount of buses needed. You would double local jobs. You would double jobs for mechanics. So it touches on at least two of those program identities. I think partnering up to bring other resources in is very important. I hadn't thought about that, but to work with Metro and MST would be an awesome thing. And you avoided me having to do the rest of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I think we're on to item 8 on the agenda. Receive an update and support staff recommendations on the electric vehicle incentive program. Yes. And Ms. Trencher, it looks like you're going to present.
Yes, good evening, everybody. For my program update today, I'm going to be seeking your support for a recommendation on the EV incentive program, building codes, and solar on affordable housing, now named Project Sunshine. We can thank JR for that terrific name. What I think I'll do is I'll review each
Wait,
program.
who do we thank for that?
JR. Mr.
What did he name
Kilgore.
of after himself? Is that what he did?
What I'll do is I'll review each program and seek support for each program one at a time. And once we've gone through all 3 of those programs, I then have some really general program updates for you at the end that don't require any direction from you. So let's jump into the EV incentive program. Also, I kind of wanted to emphasize my focus here today has been on some of the changes that I'm recommending. So if you have any questions about the original program, I hope you'll jump in and ask any questions. So in the EV incentive program, there's been several recent developments, and those developments have really encouraged us to suggest some changes to our current EV incentive program. First, over the last few weeks, we've had the opportunity to learn from Peninsula Clean Energy's experiences. Peninsula Clean Energy introduced their EV incentive program in November. Their program has similar attributes to what Monterey Bay Community Power was proposing. Specifically, while Monterey Bay Community Power is encouraging extremely aggressive incentives for our income qualified customers and our public agencies, for those customers that don't fit into those classifications, we've been suggesting that we will be advertising the discounts off MSRP, and those discounts will incent our community to purchase an EV. Peninsula Clean Energy made the same assumption. Again, they introduced in November, and they had very low participation rates. In December, they offered a $1,000 incentive to their entire community, and participation rates spiked. So there's a lot of reasons why an individual would participate in the program, and you can't say that it's specifically because of that $1,000 incentive, but they did receive quite a bit of customer feedback, and one of the comments is the incentive just offered credibility to the program. There was a sense of distrust, perhaps, that the discounts off MSRP through the dealership was actually real. Additionally, we received some feedback from members of our community through the Electric Automobile Association that while they really support these aggressive incentives for the income qualified community and public agencies, they felt that it would be more equitable if our entire community received something. They understood that it had to be smaller, but that the entire community should have an opportunity to participate through incentives through Monterey Bay Community Power. And lastly, related to these incentives, we've discovered that if all community members receive some form of incentive from Monterey Bay Community Power, there are administrative mechanisms that can be put into place through the dealership that would allow Monterey Bay Community Power to better enforce that the pass-through of discounts off of MSRP actually go to the customers. So it's an administrative aspect, but it's an ability to really ensure that those discounts are making it to our customer. So the first change that I'm recommending is to offer an incentive to all of our community members. The second change that I'm suggesting is around used EVs. When we first created this program, we were really hopeful that the used EV market would be really robust and strong. And unfortunately, if any of you have been watching EV news, the degradation issues around the Nissan Leaf have really impacted the used EV market. Additionally, We've always expected the used EV sales through this program to be pretty low. I think Sonoma Clean Power experienced maybe 4% of their sales to be related to used EVs, and none of those went to our income qualified customers. So we always knew it would be low, but what we didn't understand is that by adding used EVs, it adds a level of complexity to the program that makes it much more expensive to administer and potentially would delay the launch of the program. So for all those reasons, we're suggesting that we not include used EVs in the EV incentive program. So I just want to kind of summarize for you what I'm suggesting here. The column that says September 18, that is what was approved through the budget process in September. Proposed is what I'm suggesting today. You'll notice that it's the same structure. Our goal is to have one dealer per manufacturer, and we would have the one dealer per manufacturer that offered the greatest discounts off MSRP. But the changes are, again, no used EV in this offering. Our hope is that once the bolts come off lease later in 2019, then we'll have a really robust used EV market that we can talk about. But for this offering, no used EV in the program. And then lastly, I'm suggesting having an incentive for our income qualified customers, for our public agencies, as well as all other community members who don't fit into those two categories. What I'm not asking for today is I don't expect you to approve those dollar amount incentives. What I would like to do is come back in February with a full analysis that really looks at what we can expect from our manufacturers and dealers for a discount off MSRP. I can work with our program administrator who has a lot of experience with other EV incentive programs, so I can really pull together more of a robust analysis of what I'm recommending for an actual incentive amount. This is just my best estimate today, but I'd like to have a more robust discussion around that. So that is my recommendation in a nutshell.
Excellent. So, just so, well, Mr. Abashi's gone right now, so I'll come back to him in a second. Oh, no, I think we'll go ahead with our discussion and not put him on the spot. I'll turn to our council members for any questions or discussion on this topic.
So I just want to be clear that we're understanding that the $1,000 for the all community members is a discount off the MSRP and not a rebate?
No, I'm suggesting we have 3 incentive amounts. So we would have, for those customers that qualify who are income qualified, they would receive a very aggressive incentive. For those groups who qualify as a public agency, they would receive an aggressive incentive, and all other community members would also receive a smaller incentive from Monterey Bay Community Power.
But these are cash incentives.
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Thank you.
Mr. Hartman.
Could we include nonprofits in with public agencies?
They are included, absolutely.
They are already included?
Absolutely.
Mr. Capron.
How are you deciding what types of vehicles to include in going out to dealerships, and what kind of criteria are you using?
Yeah, the one criteria we're requiring is it has to have a minimum 100 miles range. We're also looked at the most popular vehicles from the Sonoma program. I wish I could say that there are boatloads to throw out there, but when you look at 100% EV, it's pretty limited. It's Bolts, it's Leafs. We're going after Kias, Hyundais. I'm missing one. There's 5. Volkswagen, of course.
And do you know how you'll analyze, how you'll weigh more mileage versus higher price in the proposals you get?
I'm not sure I'm following your question.
So if you had a 220-mile Bolt, which was more expensive in the total, net price after discount versus a 100-mile Kia.
Oh, I see.
How would you decide which was a better value for our customers?
What I'd like to do is I'd like to get one dealer per manufacturer. So I'd like to have, so that our customers can choose exactly what they want. That would be if everything comes together, that would be my goal.
And as new models come out, you will add additional manufacturers, hopefully?
Yes, if that were to happen,
future.
absolutely. I don't think that's going to happen during this time period, but yes.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. Just a moment, Mr. Osmer, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the exclusion of the used vehicles up front, because whether the vehicle is new or used, it's dependent upon its individual availability. So what's I'm not quite clear on the reason for the delay.
Well, really 3 reasons. We don't see a lot of demand right now in the used market, but even if we did, we know that just based on history, the actual volume sold is going to be pretty low. So then it's a matter of, do we want to pay a lot more in program administration expenses for a market that's probably not that robust and is not really meeting the needs of many of our customers?
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please.
Can I? Can this incentive be combined with federal and state incentives?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
And do you guys help the customers to get to this, to combine them?
Yes, we're
Yeah.
actually pulling together on our website the ability to link customers directly to the application process for all of the different rebates, whether it's the CVRP rebate, the PG&E rebate. There's a number of incentives outside of our program that customers can take advantage of.
Okay, great.
Ms. Levine?
Yeah, I have a few questions. So I assume that you're not including Tesla because they don't qualify because they've sold too many cars this year or something, that they don't get the federal rebates, or it's just too expensive?
You know, I can't really answer that question. I didn't include, please.
I'm going to jump in. I don't see why we should. If the Tesla manufacturer or a dealer is in town, and regardless of how much the customer is going to get from the federal or state, I don't see why we shouldn't provide an incentive. I may be overruling my staff here, but
No, it was hard to rationalize why we would give an incentive to somebody who can afford a Tesla.
Fair. Fair. And then I have a couple more questions.
Sorry, Mike.
Would they be, if you qualified for the income qualified, would you also get the all community members discount because you are, no, so you only get one?
No. All community members will get the discount off MSRP, and then there will be select incentives for each, if you will, customer segment.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, and then it looks like from your September 18 plan to the proposed one, there was more incentive allowed for the income qualified folks. And is there a reason why it looks like that went down versus the public agency to boost the $1,000? Can you take a little bit from both? I don't know.
And we could. What I did was $1,000. My instinct tells me $1,000 is probably as low as we can go to actually have it have meaning. I reduced the from 5,000 to 4,500 because 4,500 is still the most aggressive incentive out there for income qualified customers, and it was a way to partially pay for the additional money going to the remainder of the community.
I'm just thinking a lot of, not all public agencies, but some public agencies are well funded and could probably afford it rather than somebody who can't.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Groot, you haven't spoken on this topic. Go right ahead, Mr. Groot.
Well, I have, but I'll add the discussion on Teslas spurred me to think, and I have nothing against Teslas, but Porsche, Jaguar,
Audi.
Fisker, Audi all have expensive electrics that they're coming out with or already on the market. And I'm just wondering if people who can afford these vehicles really need $1,000. I would say that we would probably be better spent supporting those who are really in the medium of the market, so to speak, the Bolts, the Hyundais, whoever they may be. They're really the ones that we should be going after to give them the incentive to take that step and not just buy another gasoline vehicle, but buy an electric.
Hang on one second. Dr. Bueno.
Three questions. First is, these are all dealerships that are within the Tri-County area?
Yes.
Okay. Second is, what is the rationale of the public agencies dollar amount compared to the other?
It was based on looking at some of the other fleet programs that are out there. We really don't have a sense of whether we'll be able to incent many public agencies, quite frankly. They have a very long budgeting cycle. This wasn't included in their budget because we weren't here. So we don't know how many will actually take advantage of it, but we want to ensure that it's aggressive enough to get their attention. And looking at some of the other fleet programs out there, it looks pretty strong.
I want to add to that just one more thing, that public agencies don't pay taxes. So they're not going to get the federal tax credit or the state tax credit or any tax credit of any kind. So that's probably why we had to kind of push it up a little bit from $1,000.
And then we're just approving the program, not the dollar amount today.
That's correct.
I really appreciated your answer that you're going to come, well, it wasn't an answer, your preemptive statement that you're going to come back with some more reasons around the incentive and justification for this, for the numbers. Mr.
Absolutely.
Hartman, did you have a question on?
I want
'cause
to hear
we'll get to everybody.
Stedman says,
Okay,
and then
Mr.
I'll
Stedman.
make a comment.
Yeah, and as Beth probably knows, we've had a number of people that are low-income qualified actually purchase Tesla, which sort of blew our. So we're not sure if they're somehow gaming the system, but some people want to drive the nicest car possible. So if they want to go out and do that, our EV program, we've been rebating typically $1,500. Initially, we were giving $27,000 to public agencies for vehicle replacement. We were requiring them to destroy a gas vehicle for that. Currently, we now give that at a $10,000 level. So we haven't really had that many income qualified vehicles that have been incentivized this past year. That was a new thing. We have had a lot of used. And that includes other vehicles just besides the Nissan Leaf. And the reason for that is that gets at a lower price point than for some of the income qualified to be able to get out there in a used vehicle and get the incentive as well. So we're not sure how our incentive program is going to be operating in conjunction with this, or even if it will be in existence, because we don't want to send mixed messages to the public with regard to incentives that may be out there. But we've had a limited pool of money of $400,000 a year, so it's not as much as this can be, and we'd be happy to contribute or somehow add value to this. But we have a lot of data on where people live, who's buying what, and the types of cars that have been incentivized in our region for the past several years. So,
Have you ever exhausted those funds?
we typically have we exhaust it within 3 to 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So our program doesn't last very long, and we reauthorize it every year.
And is that something that you think will be happening with this program?
I don't know.
Fair enough.
Typically, Sonoma Clean Power has not spent all of their funding for a program, so I don't know.
And just a clarification, when I say I am the Monterey Bay Air Resources District. That's the program.
One of the hats that you wear.
Yeah.
There's some differences in the two programs. MBARD's program allows customers to buy an EV from wherever they choose, whereas we're trying to build our local dealers and building that infrastructure. So we're putting more restrictions around our customers, quite frankly. It also takes time to build awareness, and that's something that Sonoma Clean Power has really emphasized with us. First year, they didn't have nearly the success they'd hoped. The second year, volume doubled. So it just takes time for people to really understand it's out there.
And sorry, one more question about that. If you do have funds left over from the first year, will it roll over and build up the second year, or is it going to be redistributed?
Oh.
I don't know about this specific program, but the total amount of money in the programs, if there's any money left over in that, will always roll over to the following year.
I just want to chime in. You probably can imagine, but this program is only available to MBCP customers. So
Yes.
If a customer's opted out,
Hopefully
doesn't
you will.
mean they can't not get the PG&E one or the state, but I'm just saying in terms of us supporting our customers. We also want to work with the dealers who are actually our customers.
Right.
So if
But
we
can't
find
they-
out a dealer is not our customer, maybe it's an opportunity for us to re-engage.
Can't they opt in a heartbeat? Isn't it a really easy thing to opt back in?
It is technically if you opted out before your 60-day window. So there's structures with being enrolled as a customer, whether it's PG&E or us, that say if your enrollment date is July 5th and you opted out in October, you have to stay with PG&E for a year.
Gotcha.
So they wouldn't be eligible for this. And it's the same principles with commercial customers too.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman, you've been very patient.
Okay, I'm glad to hear your focus is on the Tri-County area, so that's reassuring, and I applaud you for that. You mentioned the website as one mechanism for advertising, but do you mind commenting on some of the strategy that you have around advertising and getting this? How are you getting our constituents? What are we calling everybody?
Our customers?
Yeah.
Yes.
How are we notifying them? What's that look like?
We have an entire laundry list of activities that we're planning around marketing to access all of our customers. And I don't have the list with me, but I can email it out afterwards. We'll also be working with Bay Federal Credit Union, who's helping us with both. I'm working specifically with the dealer relationship manager at Bay Federal Credit Union, who's introducing me and meeting with us with all of the dealers. They've offered to promote the program, so we'll be getting the word out.
I have just a comment or question. Mr. Caprone, did you have one?
I had one also. If you,
Please, go right ahead.
Is the program going to be eligible to 80% of median income and below? Is that the intention in terms of qualifying?
We haven't finalized the qualifications yet. Right now, the easiest way, the way most CCAs do it, is they use CareFera, registered customers as a qualifier for the income qualified. But if you'll recall, we also discussed having kind of a graduated incentive within the income qualified. And we're working with our program administrator to figure out how we can do that.
If it's not too complicated, I think there's a lot to be said for at least 2 tiers within that. And would you be doing the income qualification? Well, I guess if you use CARE, you don't have to worry about income qualification. Yeah.
I'm doing everything I can so that we're not in the income qualification business.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Trencher, you know how I feel about acronyms turned into words. Would you
what did I say?
please state fully what CARE, FARA are?
I'm so sorry. I don't know if I know what they stand for, but I can tell you what they mean.
Well, that's good enough.
They are basically program. Dennis
Go right
actually
ahead,
does
Mr.
know.
Osmer, because I think it just excludes the public when we use
Yes,
acronyms
so
and they
right.
don't know
Yeah, so
necessarily
it's
what
a
they are.
low-income rate reduction, and it's California alternate rates for energy and family energy. I lost FARA.
I'd still give you a point for that. That's
Anyway, it's a family. The basis of CARE is simply
Yes.
income, and FARA is based on the family, regardless of income.
Thank you. Dr. Bueno.
Forgive me if you've mentioned it, but did you say what the dollar amount per year will be for this program?
The program total is $825,000. We've targeted $750,000 of that for incentives. That difference is going to be going towards program administration. $725,000.
We hope these numbers will be much bigger in future years.
Me too.
You can speak up into the microphone. Those comments are helpful. Go ahead.
Just saying, it's still a really good amount considering we just heard from our fellow council member that they're only getting 400.
Yeah, based on that, I would say that they're probably going to be, the burn rate will be pretty good, and they should have almost a year's worth of reserves for this program, which is just about right from what we've seen. So that's really great. It's good, really good to see and encouraging. So
Kudos.
I want to add also that eventually when we bring in transit buses and school buses and larger equipment, that is more likely to bring the dollars way up for this. Right now, that just to go from just standard gasoline to electric, apparently on the bus side, the difference is such a large number. Beth is advising me just to hold back for another year or two before we start getting that program into that larger transportation size.
I am so glad to hear you say that,
Yeah.
because buses have not been mentioned before, at least I don't recall this, to know that that's the intention going forward. Is it fair to say that the reason buses aren't being discussed now is because they're a lot more expensive than buying individual passenger cars, therefore the incentives would be significantly higher as well, and that would use up a lot of the funding very quickly?
Yeah, I'm told the difference between the just standard gasoline buses and electric is roughly about $500,000.
Yeah.
Wow. You heard it here, folks. Sign up while you can.
I think we also met with Santa Cruz Metro in particular, and they were in the process of figuring it out themselves. They just invested in natural gas, so they hadn't even broken even on their natural gas facilities. Now all of a sudden they have this goal that they're trying to reach with their electrical, but a lot of the electric and natural gas buses can't handle some of the hills. For instance, in Santa Cruz, they can't keep up with traffic on 17. So there were just a litany of problems that they were working through, and they just weren't ready yet to talk about
Yeah, it's
partnerships.
unfortunate that, the Energy Commission administered a lot of programs for getting diesel buses off the road and replacing them with natural gas, but technology has outpaced these programs, and now
Yep.
electricity looks so much better.
Although the city of Lancaster, 40% of their residents are low-income folks, they've now decided to go 100% electric buses.
Yep.
So if there's a will, there's a way, and I'm hoping that in a year or two we'll have that will.
So I was going to add a comment, I think. It may be a question, but it's back to the value judgment that we're applying to which dealers we go with. And I'm just wondering if that's a better approach, and I should turn to Mr. Habashi on this, instead of, and my council members, please, contradict if you feel this way. But I think instead of applying a value judgment to this, which dealers, what type of vehicles we should be providing incentive for, let the market determine that. Because if someone wishes to go out and purchase an expensive electric vehicle that is income qualified, to receive a large rebate, that's their decision. What we're trying to do is replace internal combustion engine vehicles. In fact, I like this approach where you have to require one be destroyed. But if the expensive manufacturers are unwilling to provide a significant rebate, at least matching all the other rebates, then let them say there's no rebate available, rather than us making that determination. That would be my suggestion, as long as they exist in the Tri-County area, and maybe that lets you off the hook right away with one that you mentioned, and because there will be others, and I just wonder if it's worth us getting involved in the value judgment of this. Let the market determine that, because individuals should be entitled to choose the car they wish if they can afford it, if they qualify, and the rebate alone would determine that. But
May I clarify?
Sure.
To make sure I understand.
Sure.
So right now, our approach will be, we will issue an RFP to all the dealers of those 5 manufacturers that I initially mentioned. At this point, we aren't including Tesla. But the idea is we issue this RFP, and our responses from those dealerships we will look at who's offering the greatest discount.
Yeah.
And then all of the sales go through that one dealer. It's an important element of the program because right now there's just not a lot of volume in our 3 counties for EV sales. So if they all go through one dealer, quite frankly, it really supports that dealer. Otherwise, the program doesn't have a lot of incentive for them. Are you suggesting that we also simply include in that RFP a Tesla dealership if we have one in the Tri-County?
anyone that
Or
produces a
BMW
100% electric vehicle, no matter who they are, that would be my thought. I hate the fact that my Leaf is virtually valueless.
Sorry, Jeff.
But I did go replace the batteries for that reason, so I can hang on to it for a while longer. And but I have difficulty personally seeing used cars being involved in this process as well at this point. So I think that makes very good sense. But at some point, so what? We don't care if it's used or not. If it replaces a gas vehicle, that's what we're interested in, in our counties. Go ahead. I may have spurred some additional comment.
Yeah, I just would respectfully disagree with our
Okay.
chair. I would think that we'd want to have a maximum cost of the vehicle. I don't, people who can afford a more expensive car don't need an incentive to get them to do it. And I think it's very unusual to have a low-income family purchasing a car that costs $50,000 or $60,000. So I don't think there's public value in that myself, personally.
I agree.
Mr. Hartman, did you want to add anything?
I just
Pile
maybe
on, I'm ready.
getting into the weeds here, but is it necessary to restrict it to one dealership, and will those dealerships have the bandwidth to handle how many vehicles that they're going to be? I mean, it seems like that's going to be a huge load upon them.
This
Do they
is
have
what
that
Sonoma
capacity?
discovered. Yes, you're absolutely right. And especially since our dealers aren't prepared for this kind of demand. What Sonoma discovered is that indeed the dealer that was selected did run out of inventory fairly quickly, and the end result was the customer went to a dealer that wasn't participating, that dealer offered the discount plus, and the sale was still made.
In order to get the sale.
So, but is it necessary for you to be restricted to one per OEM?
The program's pretty complicated, and part of the control mechanism is to have it go through one dealer. Otherwise, the cost of administering it would be truly prohibitive. It's already pretty expensive. It would be unaffordable if we tried to enforce it with every dealer that offered the car.
And the reason we go with one dealer is because we have them compete, and it's the one dealer that offers the most incentive at their shop will be the one that we're going to work with and offer the additional $1,000. If we just make it for every dealer, then none of them will have any incentive to offer any additional discount on a vehicle.
So I would agree with that as someone who's run an affinity program with dealers and getting them to compete against each other. You do get the best deal by saying it's one dealer. So I would support that. And I also would support Mr. Capron's, Capron? Thank you. Comments. I agree. I think we should aim for something that's a little more mainstream and support those manufacturers that are producing lower end market, products such as Chevrolet and Hyundai and Kia and Volkswagen, so that we do get some volume and we do get support for those types of manufacturing processes. I think those who are going out and buying the Jaguars and the Audis and the Teslas
And the BMWs.
and the BMWs, thank you, are making that choice because they can afford to do so. So I think really we're going to get the best bang for the buck if we support a structure in which we're really aiming for the mass market.
It's perfectly okay. I'm glad to stimulate discussion on a topic that I think the public might be interested in as well. Dr. Bueno.
So I guess I hear what Mr. Capron and Mr. Gridge are saying. I guess if you could have like a certain max amount of the $1,000, I don't know, 50 of them, 100 of them, and then, do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cap it, to cap it.
Yeah, to cap it, and thereby you're still not
10% go
whatever
to
it
these
is.
manufacturers.
As a middle ground, as a
You guys are making the program even more complicated.
Yeah. Well, what I was thinking was only supporting companies that produce vehicles at a certain price range or lower, and that would potentially spur the market to come up with lower priced vehicles for everyone, so that they can get in on the fun. I don't know.
Well, MBARD once again had an issue with that. The board wanted the sales to remain within the three-county region. We were told that we could not do that with the types of funds we had. So that was a problem. And then a lot of the dealers in, for instance, the Bay Area and the LA area were offering cars at a lower value, even if you considered the rebate. So we allowed people to go to those dealerships to purchase their cars. They came back, they got the rebate, but all the tax money, which was consideration by our board, stayed in our 3-county area when you buy it out of the county, so it still comes back. So that was the concern. But this area, if anybody's tried to buy a car here in this area, it's very difficult. It's a captive audience, and we found that most people go and buy their new vehicles in the Bay Area. It's just a better deal up there, and they're willing to negotiate. So that's just one of the hard facts, is it's sort of a captive audience here on the Central Coast, and we're a little bit isolated. So some people are willing to go to the extremes to get a really good deal, and they can be had, especially some of these EVs that are sitting on dealers' lots down south and they're not moving. So they've seen really huge discounts, and we're still happy to incentivize that just because they've brought it up. But I think the one dealer, if you can get somebody who will commit, as long as it's a good enough deal that they can't go out of the county or someplace else and get it cheaper. But we want to get people in electric vehicles. I think that's the whole point here. So I think that could work if you've got somebody that's willing to do that.
And to address your point, because Sonoma had the exact same issue, right? They're a small market, and it was much cheaper for their customers to go outside of the region. But again, what they discovered was that over time, it built. And we now have the advantage of our dealerships can pick up the phone and call the Chevy who participated in the program in Sonoma and understand how valuable it can be. So they've kind of paved the road for us if we can just get our foot in the door with our dealerships.
But do you have the benefit of all the information that this gentleman has under his other hat, his agency?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for that. Any more comment? Yes, I was wondering if we had, so thank you for the reminder. So I think it would be time appropriate for public comment before we discuss taking any action on this, correct? Yes. So we're looking for public comment on item 8, the EV incentives program.
Kevin Dayton, I represent Clear Honest Options and Clean Energy, but I'm going to speak here as a Monterey Bay Community Power ratepayer and resident of Monterey. The issue of whether or not there should be a limit on the price of the car, while I was sitting in my seat hearing this, I think I went back and forth 4 times on the issue, depending on what principle was overriding in terms of doing it. And Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the courage to speak out and say something that could be unpopular.
Sometimes it's courage, sometimes it's stupidity.
I think about it and I say, you know what? I think for the RFP, it might be wise not to include a limitation on the cost of the vehicle and see what you get. If Tesla dealerships here say this is a fantastic marketing opportunity and put out something really good where they're going to go the extra mile to really work with you and promote what's going on here, and it results in a lot of people buying electric vehicles, that might be your best option. So I wouldn't restrict it. I know it sounds a little anti-democratic to put an expensive car as a possibility. I also say, you know what, those wealthy people, they are also ratepayers. And, they probably would say, why don't I qualify for this? There may be wealthy people with Hummers who, it'd be great to get that Hummer off the road and replace it with a Tesla vehicle. Also, it was interesting to hear at the Air Resources Board that you found certain income qualified people want Teslas. There are going to be certain people with lifestyles. It's all about the car, and that's where they put their money and their life into it. And, you may find that some people want those Teslas who you'd be surprised with. So my feeling is don't restrict it now. Once you get the RFPs, and you can take a look at it. But give everybody an opportunity, even the luxury EV vehicle dealerships, to participate.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Singh.
Yes. It was so enjoyable listening to this discussion. I love EVs, and I do a lot of stuff with them. I didn't hear all this gentleman's comments, so I may be repeating him. Tesla doesn't discount their cars, so that's one reason maybe not to offer those discounts for that. I just talked to Beth here and was wondering if maybe there could be a cap on income per family, which the California rebate program uses, to where you make 150,000 or higher single, you don't get the rebate, and then it's like 300,000 for, you know, filing jointly or something like that. Any number could work, but she tried to explain it to me. They're doing it a little differently, and that might be too complicated. Also, let's see what else I got here. Nissan will refurbish, you probably know this, Chair Byron, $2,900 they'll refurbish your battery for you. You might look at that as a future possible program to do that for people in low incomes to get that type of car. And they'll replace the battery. I don't know what you paid, Jeff, but it was $5,900 the last time I looked.
I will answer that. I paid whatever Nissan told me it would cost.
Okay,
there was
okay.
no
You just
options.
said, fix it. I got to go home. Yeah, okay. Understand that. But that could be a possible future program. You know, get the Nissan, we'll put the battery in for you, and off you go, and it's going to last you a few years, or quite a few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, so, oh, please, step up.
This would be a question or two. My name is Rahmat Martin. I was born here in Monterey, but when the sardine industry failed in the late 40s, early 50s, my father moved myself, my sister, mother, and north, and I grew up in Humboldt County, but I came back into this three-county area 45 years ago. We live up in the SoCal Valley. I've been a strong supporter of this whole effort that you're all involved in, and decided when we could put money into what would save energy, we put into solar. Last summer, I think at the peak of the cycle, I could generate 50 megawatts a day average. And I've encouraged every friend, everybody who's involved in every organization to put panels up on their structure, their buildings when they can. And I really support what you've put up on your website. I just want to make first a question. We've been obviously a PG&E customer for years. We still get bills from PG&E, but wondering why they're not coming from MVCP now. Can anybody answer that? That's a simple question, perhaps.
So it is, and I'll turn to Mr. Habashi. This is not related to this agenda item, so we're going to have to curtail this discussion, okay? And perhaps we could take it offline. Mr. Habashi, would you like to respond?
Sure. Quickly, in order for us to get into this business, we had to sign a service agreement with PG&E, which gets PG&E to be the only agency that can bill and collect the money on our behalf. Then we'll give that money to us. So that's part of the design of the community choice aggregation program. Aside from that, even if that was not the legal design of it, in other states, and in fact in other countries, when they have two different bills, it really confuses the customer and eventually causes them to opt out.
So I thank you very much for coming to this meeting and your comments, but I'd really like to ask if you could direct them towards this agenda item, because we want you at future meetings, and I don't want to discourage you at all.
Well, my other comment would be about buses and converting buses to electric vehicles. I mean, I do enough driving in the morning and end of the day to see most of the vehicles out there on the road as commuters bringing their children to school and picking them up at the end of the day. I grew up at a time when I rode a bus to school and home almost every day. We had 5 children. They grew up riding buses up until the state pulled back all the funding, which most of you probably are aware of. What could MBCP do to influence our state to put more money back into schools? Last time I was in Las Vegas for a business meeting, I went by their bus barn, over 1,000 buses from all of their school districts in and around Las Vegas. Maybe you've all seen that. It's pretty amazing, and I think Nevada is a state that has continued to supply adequate funding to their schools so that all children could get to school on a bus every day, and now they're converting to all kinds of alternative energy. So what can we do as a tri-community area to try to push that agenda forward? That's all I have.
All right. Thank you for your comments. And I hope someone from the staff will have an opportunity to talk to this gentleman a little bit more. Any other public comments on this agenda item 8? Okay, so seeing none, I'm going to ask, because we're now at the action part of this agenda item, Mr. Habashi or Ms. Trenchard, would you explain to us what you're asking us to do in terms of action?
Yes, I am. Oh, go ahead. I'm requesting that you accept staff's recommendation, which is to not include used EVs in this program and to include an incentive for all community members.
All right, process-wise, so then we'll be if we take action on this, we're making a recommendation that would then go to operations or policy board or both.
Just the operations board.
Okay.
I motion to approve.
And I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, Ms. Laird, did we take a roll call on these? Not necessary. All right, all opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
We'll see
Now-
dollar values in February.
Yes. So now, I would also hope when this is approved that when we drive into this parking lot, we will see it full of employees driving electric vehicles. And a few charging stations. Mr. Abashi? I'm talking to you, Mr. Abashi.
Sorry, I was
Okay, please go ahead. We're on agenda item number 9. Receive an update and support staff recommendations on building code adoption.
Okay. At the November Community Advisory Council meeting, if you'll recall, Ed Pike from Energy Solutions, that's a consultant that MBARD has hired, presented the importance of, as well as the progress to date of Tri-County jurisdictions adopting charging station infrastructure building codes for new and existing buildings. The Community Advisory Council, as well as staff, recognize the importance of the initiative. In your packet that you received, Mr. Pike provided documentation demonstrating a model charging station infrastructure building code, as well as material to be used to help inform city and county officials. So the recommendation that we have is that the Community Advisory Council champion the adoption of charging station infrastructure building codes for new and existing buildings by leveraging Energy Solutions resources and material.
Is there a dollar amount? What are,
For now, the Energy Solutions and Ed's resources have been funded by MBARD.
so there's no financial
That's correct.
amount that MBCP is, okay.
Capron.
Jeff had asked me to report out to the ops board yesterday, and this program is exciting to me because electrification is so important across the board, and the ops board was a great place to share that message because it's the administrators and the county administrators and city managers. But I'm wondering if there's any plan for at least a letter to go out from Monterey Bay Community Power. It seems like a really appropriate role for us to be, for staff to be actively promoting these programs. And it also just had me thinking about building electrification and the things we can start doing. I mean, really, right now, I don't understand why new subdivisions and new commercial buildings have any natural gas in them. The technology is there to cost effectively do everything all electric. And that seems like something that there's a lot more awareness of electric vehicles, but it's something that we should really be moving forward on also in conjunction with this.
So no question, that's comment. So I take it you're in favor of this.
Absolutely.
And I didn't get a chance to thank you very much, council members. Either the vice chair or I were able to present at the operations board yesterday. So thank you, Mr. Capron, for doing that. If you don't mind, we'll probably be calling on some of you in the future to help us as well there too.
And to respond to Mr. Capron's comment, one of the programs grouped is the Building Electrification Group, and one of the objectives that we're all working together on are REACH codes.
Great.
So we hear you.
Any other comments, questions? Just looking at our council for right now. I'd like to add my endorsement as well. I think this is I hate to use the phrase, but this is a no-brainer for us. I really think we should be behind this because for all the reasons Mr. Capron indicated. But I guess my question would be the champions. I recall Mr. Pike said that this works on individual cities and counties in adopting these changes to their building code. Is it the building code? Am I correct?
It is. It's including the charging station infrastructure into the building codes for new and existing
And is that
buildings.
done on a city-by-city basis or county basis?
City by city.
Both.
And county by
Both.
county, yeah, both.
We have people that know here,
Mhm.
both. So it would seem to me that if the county endorses it first or early, then it's much easier for the cities or the other way around. So I know we have some good champions on our policy board, elected officials on our policy board who could be good champions. Have you thought about this, discussed it, or am I out of line in asking this question? Because that's where I'd be going first. I don't want to name names, but like.
But we make the recommendation that goes to them.
Yeah.
Right.
But is that the way this will proceed? Perhaps is that one or more of them will pick this up as a champion?
We have some champions. I'm just kind of smiling over here at Christie. Monterey County has been a big champion.
Yes.
For making this happen as a starting point. But I think what Mr. Pike discovered as he was trying to encourage both counties and cities that unless you have an advocate who's really pushing it, he's a consultant doing the best he can, but he needs a little bit more power behind it.
So is there anything that beyond a recommendation, which we'll get to in a moment, is there anything that we can do as council members to help this?
Well, our hope that once we approve this, we'll take it to the operations board, and to the extent that we eventually, and we will, take it to the counties and the cities one by one, seeking their approval, it is likely that we may have to meet with some of the supervisors or meet with some of the city council members, and we certainly would like to be calling upon you to accompany us and come with us and talk to them. That's what I think what a champion role should be, is trying to get that point across to those folks. Not necessarily in the meeting, because that's a presentation that probably Ed or the staff will be making, but at least just to get the supervisors and the city council members to see what we're trying to do and hopefully agree to it and eventually endorse it.
Okay. Well, thank you for those answers to my questions. If there's no more questions, I'll open it for public comment on this agenda item. And it's not get ahead of myself. We're on number 10. Yes, number 10. The building code adoption for electric vehicles.
Yeah, Robert
Number 9.
Frischmuth, and now I'm
I checked
representing.
it off already by mistake.
And now I'm representing Communities for Sustainable Monterey County. And we're an NGO, and we're all behind this. And we've already talked to the mayor of Pacific Grove, and he's considering it. And and I would also point out that next week, Thursday afternoon, is the meeting of the county's Alternate Energy and Environment Committee. And I think they've heard a presentation on this once in the past. And as far as the county coming first, doesn't make any difference. I mean, Monterey County was one of the last peoples to join the JPA and Monterey Bay Community Power. You got the cities in first. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. You can do them all at the same time. We'll do one first, and I really like the idea of bringing it up all the time in the board meetings, the operations and policy boards, because they're the people that are running those organizations. So it just takes a lot of arm twisting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comments on this item? So, members, I believe we're being asked again for a recommendation for the Operations Committee as stated. Is it? Yes, it's as stated in the second green bullet there, the recommendation.
I'll move approval of the staff recommendation.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, by voice vote, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all very much. Thank you, Ms. Trenchard and staff, and again, Mr. Habashi, thank you for being so responsive and getting this before us again so quickly so that we can take action on it. Sorry, say again?
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the vote.
Okay, so, members, I think we're on item 10, receive an update and support staff recommendations, or whatever that word is, on solar on single-family affordable housing.
That's correct. This is Project Sunshine.
Yes, wonderful.
All right. The initial plan for Project Sunshine was to use up to $100,000 of program funding to supplement the cost of not covered by state funding to install solar on single-family and multi-unit affordable housing. We've learned a few things since we initially proposed this program. First, the state fundings targeted for multi-unit affordable housing is not available yet. It will be available at some point this year, but it's not available yet. Additionally, we know that there's a really long cycle to contract with multi-unit affordable home owners. So realistically, this year, we will not be able to do any installations on multi-unit affordable housing. However, on the single-family affordable housing front, we've learned that the customer eligibility requirements have drastically changed moving forward. They're so drastic that they've definitely reduced the number of our customers eligible to receive that state funding. In San Benito County, no customer would be eligible to receive this funding. However, we have the opportunity right now to get solar on single-family homes using the less restrictive eligibility requirements. So our recommendation at this point is to recommend directing all program dollars to solar installations on single-family affordable homes and focus on our multi-unit affordable homes next year.
When does this window close?
You know, I'm going to introduce Justin Hitchcock from Grid Alternatives. Grid Alternatives is the nonprofit solar developer who is the sole developer that has access to the state funding for single-family affordable homes. So their organization will be the ones to do the solar installations. Justin was gracious enough to do a complete canvassing of our Tri-County before this eligibility requirement was made and captured documentation to allow us to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So I'm going to let Justin talk a little more to it so that he can share a bit more detail.
Mr. Hitchcock, welcome, and thank you for being here and for bringing all your access to funds with you.
You're welcome. I come with deep pockets. Good evening, council members. So to answer your question, this window of opportunity coincides with the actual drawdown of all the program funds for the single-family program, which is going to be completing towards the end of the year, so more or less the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Can you speak a little bit to just like generally, briefly, why they're taking all of these incentives away?
Sure. It's basically we're just spending all the funds that were originally allocated.
That's good.
And that just happens to be happening at the end of this year. It's being replaced with a new program, which Grid Alternatives is also the program administrator for. That program is set to launch maybe towards the middle of this year. However, as kind of the requirements on how families are qualified has drastically changed geographically speaking. So that is what Beth was referring to, is that the qualified areas are focused on the disadvantaged communities, or the EnviroScreen map you may be familiar with. And so most of the area, a large majority of the area in the Tri-Counties is not considered qualified within that map. So that's why, while we have the chance and the funding to qualify homeowners for the single-family program, we want to use that opportunity, which is this year.
Sorry, I just want to chime in about the Cal EnviroScreen, but it always, I think it comes from a good place. But when we start digging into the data, all the different columns, we saw that the city of Salinas has some of the poorest census tracts in all of the state of California. So I think something that we just need to consider is, while we look at all this funding, is like, well, we really need to look at areas that are the most impoverished and help kind of support that. So I think it's just kind of using this as kind of a starting point. I know all the CCAs are actually looking at disadvantaged communities and helping to kind of shape the narrative a little more holistically and openly, so that folks, from all walks of life, whether it's, you're near a refinery or actually you're in a really low income area, you'll still have access, hopefully, to these funds. I just wanted to provide that sidebar.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman.
Did you say you did inventory of affordable housing that can
Or
that
canvas?
doesn't have solar?
I think I think Ms. Trenchard used the word canvas, the Tri-Counties. Was that?
Canvassed. He did outreach.
Oh, okay. And then, so we don't know what the potential is yet. We don't know how many affordable homes without solar are out
Please
there.
step to the mic to answer, okay? That would be helpful. Thank you. I didn't mean to
Me or
interrupt you.
him? I'm
Him.
close. Okay.
Yeah, we don't know the total potential of all homes that don't have solar yet, or all low-income owned affordable homes that don't have solar yet. Yeah, that would be a tough one to answer, because we'd need to know which of those homes also may have gotten solar through other solar contractors,
Right.
Which we don't know that information.
And then how much will the 100K, how many homes will that affect? And what's the kilowatt roughly how much are you going to buy or offset?
So that will cover 20 homes, and the size of the system will be up to 5 kilowatts but it will be custom sized to the needs of the family, which usually is a little less than 5 kilowatts, but we'll install up to 5 kilowatts if that's what they need.
Mr. Osmer.
Is the standard Cal EnviroScreen 2 or 3? 2.0 or 3.0?
The one they're using with the new program that's coming online is the 3.0.
But for this year it's 3.0 or?
For the funding that we are able to use in the Tri-County, it's not regulated by the EnviroScreen map at all.
That's the difference. That's the change that's coming in that is disqualifying a lot of residents.
Please, go ahead.
The reason they're adding EnviroScreen, and that's what is disqualifying some of the residents. My only groan with EnviroScreen is it doesn't always accurately display disadvantaged communities.
Yeah, we totally agree.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? And was it clear to everyone that the cost sharing that's going? I don't know if you refer to it as cost sharing. It's not cost sharing. It's contribution here. I had talked to you briefly before the meeting. Would the two of you please share how the cost split is between the agencies here?
Yes, at a high level, grid alternatives through various funding sources is taking care of 75% of the cost. Monterey Bay Community Power would come in with the other 25%, which equates to about $5,000 per home.
And the $100,000 is the 25% of the total amount.
That's correct.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions on this one, thank you, but stand by. In the event there's any public comment on this topic, we're on item 10, the sunshine item. Any public comment, please? Okay. What was the full, something? Project Sunshine, thank you. That's forever is going to be associated with Mr. Killigrew. Okay, then on item 10, it is an action item, and Ms. Trenchard's identified the recommendation at the bottom of her slide.
I'll move that we support the recommendation by staff.
Second, that we let the sun shine.
So, any further comment? Seeing none, voice vote, please. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Very good. Thank you, Ms. Trenchard. I can't thank you enough for bringing these to us, and I'm glad we have the opportunity to make these recommendations to the Operations Board. Look forward to many more of these.
Thank you.
There's one more
Thank
right
you for
now.
your support.
Say again.
Well, the hard work is over. I just have two quick informational updates for you that I just want to make you aware of. The first one was Cal EVIP. The CEC has now implemented several Cal EVIP projects, and they plan to launch
Excuse
several.
me, Ms. Trenchard, I should call the item just for the...
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No,
Yep.
it's not your fault, it's mine. Well, we can blame it on someone else, but we won't.
Project Sunshine, that's how you get to blame it on.
All right, we are on item 11, and it's my fault that I forgot to call it. It is receive an update on MBCP programs. This is a discussion item, and I see that you're presenting. Please go ahead.
Cali VIP, the CEC has now implemented several Cali VIP projects, and they plan to launch several more geographies over the next several months prior to launching the Tri-County Cali VIP. The program elements of Cali VIP continue to evolve as the CEC and CSE learn from each project that's been implemented. Additionally, there are online tools that are being developed that we haven't seen yet, but we have a sense of what they're supposed to do, which would definitely meet some of the needs of our customers, but we haven't seen them yet. So we have had several customer segments suggest programs that Monterey Bay Community Power could provide, but we're working with this moving target because we don't really know what the project is yet. It's, there's been some discussions around changing their rebate amounts. There's still discussion around the tools that would be offered and even some of the program requirements. So I'm just providing this update to share that before Monterey Bay Community Power commits additional funding through Cal EVIP or considers offering programs outside of Cal EVIP to augment the success of infrastructure installations, we'd really like to have the opportunity to evaluate the successes and lessons learned from the projects that have already been implemented. So what you'll see from me moving forward is updates based on what we've learned from those other projects, and moving forward any recommendations that we see where Monterey Bay Community Power can get involved with Cal EVIP. And lastly, I had a couple of folks ask me about this cool group, this Northern California programs group within the CCA world, so I just thought I'd provide a quick update. There are 7 CCAs that the program leads all get together. We're working to really share information as well as figure out opportunities for collaboration. The most active one is the Building Electrification Group, which is already looking at various action items where we can all work together to keep moving this forward. The number one focus right now is REACH codes. Additionally, the Strategic Collaboration Group is very active. They're looking at all different ways where the different Northern California CCAs can collaborate. Their first deliverable is coming up with a list of program proposals to the CEC for potential funding opportunities. These are opportunities that aren't funded today that would benefit CCAs. Additionally, Monterey Bay Community Power and East Bay Clean Energy got together, and we're suggesting that all CEC funding opportunities have alternative definitions of what equates to disadvantaged community to address some of the concerns that Natalie raised, so that we're not stuck with just Cal Enviro Screen 3.0, which is the common way of defining a disadvantaged community, which might work well in a dense urban area, but truly does not work for geographies like Monterey Bay Community Power, where we have a more rural community. So that's the last piece. That's all I've got.
Wow. Thank you for that explanation. I didn't understand what this slide or organization was, and that makes great sense. It's definitely a strength of public agencies that you can work together and figure out what's best for the communities that you serve. It's just wonderful that we have this capability. So I'm glad this is happening.
It's really interesting too, because so many of the geographies have very different demographics, and yet there's enough of us where there's enough commonality to really learn from each other. It's terrific.
Okay, so are there any questions or comments about item 11 from council members?
I would really be curious to see what you come up with for the definition for disadvantaged communities.
At this point, we'll just take alternatives.
Yeah.
I can say that the CEC, for one of the Cal EVIP projects, agreed to go with Cal Enviro Screen 3.0, but they went with top 50 percentile rather than the top 25 percentile, which is a concession.
Yeah. Huh.
Any other comments, questions? So we open it up to public comment, please, on item 11, the update on the MBCP programs. Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item 12, which is a regular item that I asked to be put on the agenda, that we ask, so that you all have an opportunity as council members for anything that you wish to provide a brief announcement on or report out on your activities that are not within the purview of the CAC, or whatever you'd like to mention. This is an opportunity to communicate information to fellow council members in the public domain. Anyone?
I just wanted to say
Captain.
I really appreciated the development of policy on programs. I've been, just in the process of trying to get up to speed on this to try to think of things more holistically, and I thought it was really helpful the way that was thoughtfully put together, so thanks for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let folks know, I may have mentioned this last time, but there's going to be a sustainability fair at Salinas City Hall this Saturday, the 19th, from noon to 10 to 3. And we're going to have a ride and drive event for EVs. We've got a number of vehicles that will be on hand for folks to test drive and so forth, and hopefully have some discussions about purchasing vehicles. There's going to be free food and entertainment. I understand there's going to be a really good jazz band there. So I would encourage all to attend and have a good time this Saturday.
I'm sorry, Salinas?
Salinas City Hall. And Monterey Bay Community Power has actually also helped sponsor this event, so along with the Air District and 10 to 3.
Thank you, and the weather's looking good for Saturday.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Any others? Any other comment? I'm sorry, not comments. Any other report outs? Mr. Groot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. I've been working with a couple of the staff members here on a number of issues that we can collaborate with on the agricultural community, and we're looking actually putting together a workshop for growers on Monterey Bay Community Power and some of the benefits there. We had a very successful rate of signing up people and not having a lot of opt-outs, which typically happens in agriculture. They tend to shy away when they can opt out. So we're looking at some positive influences that we can make there. And then I also wanted to mention and thank the clerk of the council for organizing all our meetings very well, and particularly for sending the slides out in advance. That really helps. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think we all feel the same way, and we don't say it enough. Thank you. We make it run very smoothly. Seeing no other action, I will just add a comment. This is directed towards our CEO, Mr. Habashi. I know that you're thinking about some public workshops. If you'd like to comment on it, fine. Otherwise, just please take this comment. I'd like to ask you if you could get those dates that you're thinking about out to us as soon as possible, so council members can get those posted. This does not have to be the time and place, but I just would encourage you so we get the highest attendance possible at these workshops, because these are busy folks, and they give their time, and I would like to get all of them there if possible.
Yeah, we just want to be clear, the dates are March 30th and October 12th. Those are the two dates that that we've decided on, and we'll put together an agenda for at least the first one for the March 30th, and get it across to you folks for comments in case you want to add something or take something out. These are workshops for everybody. The dates are set. It's not going to be a Brown Act meeting. It's going to be a place where everybody gets to exchange ideas, and already JR put a preliminary agenda that we're looking at, and we're going to finalize very soon and get it to you.
Excellent. So we're all equals at that meeting, no Brown Act. We can all talk freely. We will not be taking any action at that meeting. It's really getting public input on the topics that will be on the agenda.
I see Rob scowling.
Mr. Shaw, did I say something wrong?
Just for clarification, as I understand, public workshops, the public will be invited. We will all comply with the Brown Act, but it will not be an agendized formal discussion like this, but it will be in compliance with the Brown Act.
Yes, of course. The Brown Act always applies to us.
And the first one is going to be in Watsonville, by the way.
Do we know the location of the second?
October 12th?
We haven't decided yet. We're trying to get the second one in Salinas, but we know the first one is going to be in Watsonville.
Very good. That was all I had. And since we're done, I would like to remind you all that our next meeting scheduled is for February 21 here at 6 p.m. Thank you all so very much for coming, particularly those members of the public that endured our meeting. We are adjourned.